When you look at Cody and Robin Brown's family, it's impossible to ignore the toxic undercurrents that flow just beneath the surface. What's supposed to be a picture of a large, loving family turns out to be an emotional battlefield. Sister Wives has shown us the ups and downs of polygamy, but the dynamic between Robin and Cody? Well, that's a whole other level of dysfunction. In this video, we're about to dive deep into one of the most shocking, manipulative family dynamics ever seen on television. Why does Robin keep her children so close, almost as if they're glued to her? And why does Cody, the so-called patriarch, neglect his older children in favor of the younger ones? What's really going on behind the scenes of their relationship? We've seen moments of emotional neglect, favoritism, and even manipulation that have shaped the lives of their children in ways we're just beginning to understand. Robin and Cody's actions aren't just bad parenting, they're leaving long-lasting scars on their kids. From Cody's neglect of his older children to Robin's subtle and not so subtle ways of controlling her family, the truth is far more complicated and disturbing than we've been led to believe. Hi, I'm Olivia, and welcome to TLC's Sister Wives Secrets. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on Cody and Robin's family drama and revealing uncomfortable truths that they've tried to hide. If you've been following the show, you know there's always more than meets the eye. Subscribe now, hit that bell notification, and stay tuned. You won't want to miss this juicy revelation about what's really happening in that family. Let's get into it. From the moment Robin entered Cody's life, something shifted in the family dynamic. She wasn't just another wife. She was the one who got the most attention, the one who made the most noise, and let's be honest, she knew exactly how to keep it that way. And Cody? Well, he practically let her. Sister Wives has shown us time and time again that Robin and Cody's relationship isn't just complicated. It's a constant game of manipulation, control, and emotional dependency. Let's be clear, Robin has a masterful way of controlling the narrative. Whether it's through playing the victim, making Cody feel like the world revolves around her needs, or keeping her kids at the center of every situation, she does it effortlessly. And Cody? He falls for it every single time. But it's not just about their relationship. It's about how their toxic dynamic bleeds into the lives of the children and affects the entire family. One of the most glaring examples of this was when Robin tried to keep Cody's attention solely on her by manipulating situations to her advantage. Take, for instance, the moment when Robin played the woe is me card during their struggles to blend families. Robin knew just how to twist the situation to make Cody feel like his time with her, and by extension, her kids was being threatened. She'd get upset, making it clear that if Cody didn't prioritize her, there could be consequences. This wasn't subtle, and it was always about maintaining control. It wasn't just about keeping Cody close to her emotionally, it was about keeping him emotionally dependent on her, always needing to feel validated and needed. Let's not forget the countless times when Robin would manipulate Cody's relationship with his other wives, especially when it came to the children. Robin made it clear that her kids, especially the younger ones, would always come first. Cody? Well, he didn't really put up much of a fight. Robin's children, particularly the ones from her previous marriage, were never allowed to grow up. They were emotionally coddled, infantilized in a way that kept them dependent on Robin for emotional support. And Cody, instead of stepping in and encouraging some kind of independence, actually perpetuated the dynamic by treating them as though they couldn't handle life on their own. How many times did we see him tiptoe around his younger kids? He wouldn't reprimand them, wouldn't give them tough love. Instead, he treated them like fragile little birds who needed constant coddling. This was his way of staying emotionally connected to Robin, of keeping her dependent on him. But in doing so, he neglected his older children, who were left to grow up too fast, figure out their problems without much help, and deal with an absentee father. Take Logan, for example. Logan is the oldest of Cody's children, but how often did we see Cody engage with him? Logan was clearly more independent, more mature, yet Cody seemed to have a much more strained connection with him. There's this subtle and at times not so subtle tension where the older kids who didn't fit the tender-aged mold were simply ignored emotionally. They were left to fend for themselves while Cody doted on Robin's younger children, giving them the attention and emotional support that the older kids needed. What kind of father does that? The kind who can't see beyond his own emotional needs. That's who. Robin's manipulation of Kody isn't just about keeping him to herself. It's about controlling the entire narrative of the family. She's made it clear that her kids are her priority, and Kody has bought into this idea. And that emotional dependency doesn't just harm Kody and Robin, it harms their kids, especially Robin's children, who are growing up in an environment that stunts their emotional growth. They're never really allowed to learn independence or face the real world on their own terms. It's a suffocating environment where the kids can't thrive emotionally, and Kody, who should be the father figure, is so emotionally immature himself that he doesn't recognize the damage it's causing. The tension in this family, the favoritism, the unhealthy emotional dependencies, all of this stems from the very foundation of Robin and Kody's relationship. Their dynamic, at its core, is built on manipulation, emotional control, and an unhealthy attachment to one another that leaves the other wives and children in the background, neglected and overshadowed. And while Robin plays the emotional game to perfection, Kody, he's just playing along, completely oblivious to the damage it's causing. It's a perfect storm of dysfunction. If there's one thing we can't ignore, it's how Robin and Kody's approach to parenting has deeply impacted their children, especially the older ones who aren't part of the tender-aged group. It's hard to overlook how Kody's parenting decisions seem to revolve around keeping his younger children emotionally close while neglecting his older ones, especially when they needed him the most. And Robin? Well, her version of parenting isn't much better, as she consistently coddles her children in a way that stifles their independence and emotional growth. Let's start with Kody, whose favoritism is more glaring with each season of Sister Wives. The man has become the embodiment of the absentee father. It's almost like watching a man-child throw tantrums over not getting his way, all while turning a blind eye to his responsibilities as a father to his older children. For instance, when we watch Kody interact with his younger children, there's this unmistakable softness to his approach. He's affectionate, patient, and gives them everything they need, while his older kids are often left to fend for themselves. Take Logan and Madison, for example. These two kids have had to become more self-sufficient, often looking to the other wives for support because Kody wasn't emotionally present. Logan, in particular, was often the one who had to make tough decisions for his younger siblings, and Kody barely acknowledged it. It's a sad reality when the kids who are supposed to be the focus of the family's attention become invisible in the eyes of their father. Then there's Robin, who takes a very different approach, one that's no less damaging. Her parenting style seems to revolve around keeping her kids in a constant state of emotional dependency, as if she's terrified they'll grow up and leave her behind. It's like she needs them to be emotionally reliant on her in order to maintain control over her family, and, more importantly, Kody. We saw this play out when Robin's children were treated as fragile, as though they couldn't manage anything on their own. Whether it was through manipulating Kody into giving them extra attention or keeping them close when they were clearly old enough to stand on their own, Robin ensured her kids were always dependent on her. This led to an environment where her children weren't given the opportunity to grow emotionally or develop the skills needed for adulthood. And what about the kids who didn't fit into the tender-aged category? They were the ones left behind. The older children, like Logan, Madison, and Gwendolyn, were often pushed aside while Kody and Robin focused on the younger ones. As a result, these older kids were forced to mature at a much faster pace than they should have. They had to take on adult responsibilities, including emotional labor, because their parents were too busy with the younger ones. This emotional neglect is stark, and it shows just how deep Kody's favoritism runs. Over the seasons, the public has become increasingly aware of Kody's role as an absentee father. He may be physically present at family events, but emotionally, he's checked out, especially when it comes to the older kids. The toll this takes on them is evident. You can see the cracks in their relationship with Kody, and it's not just an issue of distance, it's the emotional neglect that runs deep. They're expected to be independent, strong, and self-reliant, but they weren't given the emotional tools to navigate that. At the heart of this dysfunctional family is a clear imbalance in the way the children are treated. The younger kids, particularly Robin's, get the warmth, affection, and attention they need, while the older ones are left to deal with the consequences of emotional neglect. This favoritism is not only damaging to the kids, but to the family dynamic as a whole. Cody and Robin's inability to see this, or worse, their refusal to acknowledge it, speaks volumes about their parenting failures. Robin's manipulation of her children is one of the most uncomfortable aspects of Sister Wives, and it's crucial to understand how her need for control goes beyond just maintaining a close-knit family dynamic. It's about keeping her children emotionally tethered to her in a way that is ultimately detrimental to their growth and well-being. Every move she makes seems to be about ensuring her children are so emotionally dependent on her that they can't find a way to step out from under her shadow. Let's take a moment to break down exactly how Robin does this. A key example that stands out is her insistence on keeping her kids involved in the family's every move, especially with Cody. One of the most telling moments came during the pandemic, when Robin made it clear that her kids should be part of every family decision. This wasn't just about keeping them close for their emotional security, but about ensuring that they never strayed too far. Robin would often use emotional cues to keep her children from experiencing independence. Whether it was creating situations where her kids were too emotionally dependent on her to leave for college, or even making Cody feel guilty for spending time with other wives, Robin's tactics were always self-serving. The underlying issue is that Robin isn't just nurturing her children. She's emotionally controlling them. She wants them to need her. Take her relationship with her daughter, Dayton, for example. From the start, Robin painted herself as Dayton's protector, someone who was always looking out for her emotional well-being. But over time, you can see how this dynamic shifted from supportive to stifling. Dayton was unable to establish boundaries, and instead of growing into an independent young adult, she remained emotionally bound to Robin. This didn't just hold Dayton back, it created an unhealthy family dynamic where the children of Robin and Cody were emotionally dependent on their mother, which in turn placed the entire family's emotional health at risk. It's clear that Robin's need for control stunts her children's emotional development. When a parent manipulates their children into believing they can't survive without them, it sends a message. You aren't capable on your own. This prevents the kids from building the resilience and autonomy that they need to face the world. Instead of learning to solve problems or navigate emotional challenges on their own, Robin's children were conditioned to rely on her for emotional stability, creating a situation where they feel they cannot function without her constant validation and guidance. This emotional manipulation leads to a toxic family environment. It's not just about Robin and her kids, it ripples throughout the entire family. When one part of the family is emotionally isolated and dependent, it affects everyone. Her children, who are supposed to learn how to be self-sufficient, grow up feeling like they're incapable of making decisions on their own. This lack of autonomy leads to a sense of emotional isolation because they don't feel they have the tools to form healthy, independent relationships. They're stuck in a web of emotional dependency that makes it nearly impossible for them to break free, especially as they grow older. In the larger context of the Brown family's dynamic, Robin's manipulation is a key factor in why the family structure is so fractured. By keeping her kids emotionally tethered to her, she's not only hurting their ability to grow, it's damaging the entire family's emotional balance, creating rifts that will be difficult to heal. Kody Brown's emotional insecurity and narcissism have always been glaring issues within the Sister Wives narrative. But the way these traits affect his relationship with his children, particularly his older ones, is deeply concerning. His self-absorption takes center stage at moments when his kids need him the most, and this behavior leaves emotional scars that are hard to ignore. It's easy to see how Cody's narcissism manifests itself. The most significant example is his clear favoritism toward his younger children with Robin. When it comes to the younger kids, Cody is doting, attentive, and even goes out of his way to make sure they feel special. Take, for example, his relationship with his younger kids, particularly the tender-aged ones. His relationship with them is often described as hands-on and overindulgent. He even goes so far as to prioritize their needs over the older kids, especially when they have issues that require his attention. But here's the thing. The older kids who need him the most are often left to fend for themselves. They're either emotionally neglected or outright abandoned. Remember the scene when Cody was almost entirely absent during Gwendolyn's graduation, where his involvement was minimal at best? While his younger children received his attention, the older ones who had grown up with him seemed to be left to manage their own emotional needs. This neglect is hard to miss, and it's obvious that Kody's emotional insecurity prevents him from engaging with his older children in a meaningful way. What's even more heartbreaking is how Kody's behavior contrasts with how he treats the younger children. While the older kids, who have grown up around his inconsistency, are emotionally neglected, the younger children are showered with attention. It's almost as if Kody's need to compensate for his own insecurities manifests in a way that makes him overcompensate with the younger ones. He's still emotionally immature, and instead of investing time in helping his older children navigate the difficulties of growing up, he becomes consumed with creating an idealized bond with the younger ones. Bonding that might look perfect from the outside, but is built on a foundation of emotional neglect for the older kids. This dynamic creates an unhealthy power imbalance within the family. Kody, as the father, has the potential to be a stabilizing presence in his children's lives. But instead of offering guidance or emotional support to those who need it most, he plays favorites, creating an environment of tension and neglect. The older kids, who are forced to navigate life on their own without emotional support from their father, end up feeling like emotional orphans in a house full of family. Meanwhile, the younger ones are catered to, creating a divide that's palpable. This narcissistic behavior not only fuels Kody's emotional distance, but also contributes to the dysfunctional family structure. His inability to mature emotionally, to see beyond his own needs, leads to the erosion of relationships within the family. The older kids are left wondering why their father can't show up for them in the same way he does for their younger siblings. It's heartbreaking to witness the emotional toll this has on them. They long for the kind of attention and care that Kody so freely gives to others, but they're left to watch from the sidelines. Polygamy, as depicted on Sister Wives, is portrayed as a lifestyle choice that often leads to deeply fractured relationships within the family. The issues within Robin and Kody's relationship, especially the favoritism, emotional neglect, and the unhealthy dependency between Robin and her children, are exacerbated by the very nature of polygamy. Instead of creating a harmonious, supportive family structure, Kody's inability to split his attention evenly between his wives and children leads to an emotionally unbalanced system where some children receive an abundance of love and others are left emotionally starved. When you look at the way Kody's emotional investments are spread so thin, it's impossible to ignore how the polygamous structure plays a role in his dysfunction. There's just not enough of him to go around. The multiple wives, each with their own needs, expectations, and desires, require a significant amount of his attention. But rather than balancing his emotional investment equally, Kody gravitates toward the family that gives him the most validation, and that's Robin and her children. This favoritism is glaring when we see how he spends his time, attention, and energy primarily on her and their younger children, while the older kids are pushed aside. Take, for example, the tension that's constantly bubbling between Kody's various wives, each trying to carve out their place in the family hierarchy. Janelle, Christine, and Mary often express frustration with how Kody divides his time, with many moments highlighting that they feel emotionally neglected in favor of Robin. This imbalance becomes even more pronounced when we consider the children. With multiple families to manage, Kody's emotional bandwidth becomes limited, and his ability to parent equally is compromised. The older children, particularly those from Kody's previous marriages, are often left to navigate their lives on their own, while Robin's younger children continue to receive the lion's share of his attention. A clear example from the show is when Christine, in one of the most heartbreaking moments, openly admits feeling like she's been ignored and neglected by Kody. Meanwhile, Robin's kids, often described as tender-aged, are showered with attention. It's not just the wives who feel the tension. The children, too, become painfully aware of this favoritism. It creates an unhealthy dynamic where certain children feel isolated or overlooked, while others are almost coddled. This favoritism isn't just about who gets more time with Kody. It's about the emotional neglect the older children experience. In a polygamous system like Kody's, it seems that there's no real structure to ensure that every child, regardless of their biological mother, gets the emotional investment they need from their father. Instead, the system breeds an environment of competition where the children vie for attention and affection, often leaving the ones who need it most feeling abandoned. This doesn't just harm family relationships, it harms the emotional development of the kids, leaving them with long-term psychological impacts that will carry with them throughout their lives. While polygamy may be idealized by some as a way to build a large, close-knit family, in this case, it seems to have the opposite effect. Instead of a supportive, balanced environment, it creates a fractured system that relies on emotional manipulation, favoritism, and neglect. The flaws of polygamy are laid bare in the way Kody struggles to meet the needs of all his children and wives equally. The emotional toll this takes on everyone involved is undeniable, and the tension within the family continues to grow. In a family where love should be abundant and shared, the reality of polygamy on sister wives looks far from ideal. When we look at the dynamics within Robin and Kody's family, it's clear that the dangers of emotional manipulation and neglect run deep. Their relationship, marked by favoritism and control, sets a toxic precedent for the entire family. It's heartbreaking to watch children, who should be thriving in an environment of love and independence, instead feel isolated, ignored, or emotionally dependent. The lasting effects of this kind of neglect will not simply fade with time, they could affect these kids for years to come, shaping their future relationships, sense of self-worth, and emotional health. What's truly troubling is the cycle of dysfunction that seems to be perpetuated by both Robin and Kody, especially within the context of a polygamous family structure. With Kody unable or unwilling to distribute his attention and affection evenly, his children are forced to navigate the emotional chaos of competing for love, validation, and connection. As his family continues to grow, the emotional scars may deepen, leaving behind a trail of unresolved issues. And this isn't just about parenting mistakes. It's about the very foundation of what a healthy family dynamic should look like. What Robin and Kody are modeling for their children is far from what we would hope to see. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Robin and Kody's actions are damaging to their children? Do you believe polygamy amplifies these issues? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on all the latest Sister Wives drama, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.